Here at Appleseed, the simplest, most basic way is the point of aim equals the point of impact. That's how we're going to set our sights. So wherever the top of that front sight is, that's where the bullet's going to go. We're not going to do any offsets or jumping like that kind of stuff that you see in more target shooting. And where you want to align your whole sight system is center of mass on that target. Where we're shooting at these squares, put it right in the center of the square. When we're shooting at the silhouettes later, put it right where you know the V is, right in the center of that V, right where you want that bullet to go. That's step 2, sight picture. So the sight picture is your sights on the target. Step 3 is a respiratory pause. As I told you before, if you have a pretty good position, what you're going to see is as you breathe, your front sight's going to go up and down. Well, if the front sight's going to tell you where the bullet's going to land when you're aiming, if you keep breathing during your shots are going to go up and down just like this. Some people have some vertical groups there already. That's okay, we didn't tell you about respiratory pause yet. But now you know, you have no excuse. So, what you're doing during the shot is, as in your normal breathing cycle, now this is a totally relaxed thing. You don't want to feel like you're holding your breath or taking in a breath and holding it there. This is, the more relaxed, the better. So when you're in that position, breathing in and out, at almost when you've totally breathed out all the way, that's about as relaxed as you're going to be. And remember, we talked about getting rid of muscle tension, relaxing. It's all going to help your shots be more consistent if you get rid of the muscles. So if those muscles are relaxed, that's where you want to stop that breathing cycle. You take a respiratory pause there. All you do is you close off the diaphragm, the air will stop flowing, and at that point, you have a couple seconds to do the rest of the steps and take your shot. If you're fussing your shot and it's taking too long, the first thing to go if you hold your breath too long is your eyesight. You kind of need your eyesight to shoot. So this thing will start going dim. So if you're taking too long, it's okay, just abort that shot, take another breath in, out, and pause. At the pause, so during that pause is where you do all the rest of this stuff I'm going to talk about. Steps 4, 5, and 6 happen during this pause. So step 3, respiratory pause. Step 4, there's actually 2 parts. 4A is to focus your eye on the front sight. Very simply, there's only one place your eye can mechanically focus on. You can focus on the rear sight, the front sight, or the target. You're focused on the front sight, just the most simple explanation is because that's where your bullet's going to go. Your front sight's going to tell you where the bullet lands. That's what you want to know when you're looking for your shot. Target's not going anywhere. It's fine if he's fuzzy. The rear sight, you already aligned it, so keep that fuzzy. Front sight is what's going to tell you. So while you're focusing your physical eye on the front sight, you're focusing your mental part of your process here, the mind. You focus your mind on keeping your sights on target. So that sight picture you set up already, just in your mind, keep thinking about that. I'm going to keep my sight picture during this whole thing. I'm shooting at the middle of this fuzzy thing. That's okay. If you shoot the fuzz, you'll hit the fuzz, and that's good enough for Appleseed. So step 4A, focus your eye on the front sight. Step 4B, focus your mind on keeping your sights on target. Step 5 is the trigger squeeze. Notice we said trigger squeeze and not trigger pull or jerk or yank or all kinds of other things people tend to do with their triggers. And there's a couple important parts to this trigger squeeze. First, you'll hear us say when we start to go through these steps in rote, we'll say squeeze the trigger. It's a really long E. There's a lot of E's in there, and it should really take that long. That's why we extend it out that much. So as you start to take up the trigger slack, you know, depending what trigger type you have, single stage, 2-stage, trigger will start to move. It might stop in the middle. Don't worry about that. You're just steadily increasing the pressure on the trigger until it breaks. And that break should surprise you. It should be a surprise break, because any of the bad effects that you might have associated with shooting from previous outings, whether it be loud noise or recoil or smacking yourself on the shoulder or the gun jumping, any of these bad things, if you surprise yourself, it makes it much harder for these bad things that you've developed to affect the shot. By the time you jump or close your eyes or blink or any of that kind of bad stuff, the shot's already probably gone, and whatever you did isn't going to affect it as much. So it should surprise you. Second part is when you actually put your trigger finger on there, I already mentioned it while we were talking about the position, but if this is the trigger, I want it directly in the middle of the first pad. We put it there because that's the part of your finger that as you bring it back, travels back the straightest. And we want all movement to be straight back because any other kind of movement is going to throw off the shot. It's going to put the rifle in one direction or another. And you don't want to be hooking the trigger and dragging it this way. So if I hook my finger like this, it's going to tend to drag it that way. And I talked about not dragging wood. You want to have no part of your trigger finger touching the stock or any other part of the rifle as it goes back, or that'll push the rifle that way because it changes shape. So step 5, squeeze the trigger. Step 6 is follow through. So in any sport, you have a follow through. You don't just take the shot and then put the rifle down and walk away. If you keep the motion going, it'll be steady throughout the shot. And it actually takes time for the bullet to leave the barrel. During that time, you don't want to be doing anything funny, or else you're going to throw the shot off that you've already set up perfectly. So the follow through, there's 2 parts. One, the physical part is to keep your trigger finger back. So as you're squeezing the trigger throughout the trigger pull and it surprises you, when that surprise happens, don't act surprised and take your finger off the trigger. Remember we talked about keeping your finger off the trigger until your sights are on target as a safety rule. The marksmanship corollary to that is to keep your finger on the trigger while your sights are on target. So all the way throughout that trigger pull, squeeze, you should be having your finger in contact, and then you keep it all the way back. You just keep that pressure steadily increasing until you have the trigger all the way back. And if you have it all the way back, that's not going to throw off the shot while the bullet's leaving the barrel. Then when you go for the reset, after you keep it all the way back for long enough to leave the barrel, you want to reset it only far enough for the action to reset. You don't want to lift your trigger finger totally off the trigger and have the trigger come all the way back out to reset the action, because when you take your trigger finger off, when you put it back on the trigger, it's going to be in a slightly different place. So if your trigger's in a different place if your finger's on a different place on the trigger every time, it's going to add inconsistency. And my friend Nickel likes to say the name of the game is the same, is keeping everything you do from shot to shot as similar as it could possibly be. That'll close up your groups. So that's the first part of follow through, keep your finger all the way back on the trigger. Second part is to call the shot. So the key here, a rifleman fires every shot as a sighter shot. So you get feedback from all of those shots by looking at your front sight. Front sight is going to tell you where the bullet landed. And if you kept your eye open throughout the shot and you took an instant mental snapshot of that front sight when that round broke, you'll know where that round landed if your sights are set up correctly. And what this is going to do for you later, let's say you fire a group of 5 shots and you're watching your front sight the whole time, and it goes off in a slightly different place each time on the target, but one of them's totally off. Well, when you get down to your target, you already knew that one of them is totally off, and you can discount that one when you're trying to figure out, is this me or the rifle, putting these shots in a weird place? If you know it's you, that's fine. That's good info. You can fix that next time, or you can know that that one isn't going to hit. You don't have to see where your bullet lands. You saw where your front sight was. Now, if you're doing something bad like closing your eyes or not calling the shot, you have no idea. And you're going to go down there and you're going to see a couple shots here and a shot over there, and you're going to wonder, well, I don't know, is this the rifle acting weird? Is this me? Where's the center of my group really at? You're lost when you go down there. So every shot's a sighter shot. Sighter, if you're sighting something, you keep your eyes open and get that feedback from it. Rifleman uses that feedback every time.